Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for watching. My name is Michelle Kauk, and I'll be the moderator for this evening's debate. The Citizen Clean Elections Commission is the sponsor for this event. As the state's voter education agency, Clean Elections hosts debates so voters have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, ask questions on the issues that matter most to them, and vote informed. Candidates that have a contested primary election have been invited to participate in the debate. Candidates that have opted into the Clean Elections Clean Funding Program are required to participate, while traditional candidates are invited and encouraged to attend. The questions that will be asked this evening are coming directly from voters. Leading up to the debates, Clean Elections conducted outreach to voters across the state, soliciting questions for the candidates. Voters that are watching this debate live, you can submit a question at any time by email, debates@kc-a.com, by text 928-362-1062, or by phone at 480-937-1297. We screen questions for clarity to eliminate duplications, speeches, or personal attacks on candidates. Tonight's Q&A is scheduled for 60 minutes, so we may not be able to get to all audience questions, but we will do our best. To the candidates, you will each have 1 minute for your opening and closing statements and 1 to 2 minutes for your responses to voter questions. I may limit responses for time management purposes, and we remind the candidates and the audience that this is a respectful, courteous, and professional environment. Our goal tonight is to connect candidates and voters so our electorate may vote informed. Tonight's participants include candidates running for the Arizona State Senate in Legislative District 11, JoAnna Mendoza, a Democrat running as a traditional candidate, and Linda Patterson, a Democrat participating as a Clean Elections candidate. As a reminder, each district in Arizona votes for 1 state senator, and independent voters are able to vote in the primary by requesting a party-specific ballot. JoAnna Mendoza, you may begin with your opening remarks, please.
Hello, thank you so much, Michelle. First, I'd like to start by thanking the Clean Elections Commission and yourself for hosting and moderating today's Clean Elections debate. I'm very happy to be here. After military service, after retiring from the Marine Corps, I made my way back home with my son to put down roots in the very communities in which I grew up in, right here in Pinal County. And I wanted to continue a life of service, and I did just that. After taking off the military uniform, I had the opportunity and the honor and privilege of serving folks in our communities as a congressional staffer working for Congressman O'Halloran. And day in and day out and serving in that position, I saw and talked to families and folks and the stories of struggle. And it reminded me of my story of struggle and growing up in poverty in these very communities. And families were still faced with that very same struggle in the district. See, the truth is that we have elected representation in this district who refuses to put people first. And it's time that we elected a leader who will fight to put people first. Someone who will fight for public education. Every child deserves to have a quality education regardless of zip code. That healthcare is a human right, and that they have access to affordable healthcare, and that we begin to combat climate change and preserve our natural resources. And so I'm running because I'm tired of empty promises, and it's time that we elected a leader who will put people first, and I'll fight to do just that. I'm fighting for you, I'm fighting for our children, and I'm fighting for a brighter future. Thank you so much.
And now Linda Patterson for your opening remarks.
Thank you, Michelle. I want you to know, if you don't remember anything else from this debate, please pay attention to just a few short sentences. It'll be my highest honor to represent you in the state Senate. My experience and lifelong commitment to working for others will be first and foremost as I represent your needs and your concerns. I've worked in public service all my life, as a school teacher where I was awarded Teacher of the Year, as a school counselor where I was awarded Staff Member of the Year, and as a high school principal reforming high schools where I earned the designation of Administrator of the Year. I was accorded tremendous respect for my dedication, my passion, and willingness to genuinely hear what I could do for others. I will do the same for you as a state senator. My heart is filled with hope for the future. I know that effective government is all about making people's lives better and serving the common good. It must function for all the diverse people in our district, and we have a very diverse district. Rural concerns, town concerns, poor people, people who are really affluent, and each group of people needs to be brought into the tent of government. Again, our job is to serve the common good. I've been passionate about serving the communities in which I've been a part. As a public servant for decades, I exemplified great commitment, outstanding stewardship, and transparent accountability. I promise I will do the same for you. We must all work together to improve our lives. For the past year, I've asked community members just exactly what they need. I've listened to concerns, I've heard what you've said, and I have been meeting with community members and experts who tell me how to best deliver on those needs. I look forward to working for you in the state Senate, and I'm really looking forward to spending some time with you this evening where I can tell you a little bit more about what I have to offer.
Thank you both. And JoAnna, I'll start with you for the first question. And as a reminder, these are questions that we have received from voters who have sent them in via email, phone, or text. And I will also repeat the information later on to encourage more folks to chime in. So Linda, starting with you, how do you propose to bring people together to pass legislation?
Do you mean in terms of when I'm in the Senate?
Yes, if elected, how will you work with others to pass legislation?
Okay, thank you. You know, one of the things that I found as a teacher, as a counselor, and as a principal, and as in my life in public administration, is that the best answers are those, the best solutions are those when we're listening to everybody's concerns and we're working together to solve those problems. I have experience doing that. When I brought leadership teams together, we always would look at what is the data telling us, what is the research telling us, and what are best practices that we can borrow from. That strategic planning always paid off. And I would find that I could bring groups of people together with diverse needs and come up with common sense solutions. I'll do the same in the state Senate. We have a lot of problems facing Arizona. One of my biggest concerns is the fact that we're a microcosm of what is happening in federal government. It's time for Democrats to have a chance. We're forward-looking, we're willing to work for people, and I promise you I'll do that as a state senator.
Thank you, Linda. JoAnna, I will ask you the same question. If elected, how do you propose to bring people together to pass legislation?
Yeah, great question. So listen, I've already done this extensively in the military and the Marine Corps. You are required to accomplish a mission. You have to balance accomplishing a mission while ensuring the well-being and safety of those that you're entrusted to lead. And sometimes you're thrown into groups of very diverse backgrounds and very, very strong personalities and attitudes. And sometimes you don't agree on everything. But the experience that I have in working in teams to accomplish the mission is the experience that I will bring to the state legislature. We have to focus on finding some common ground. We know we're not going to agree on everything. I mean, we see that currently now in our political climate, and actually things are very partisan, but we have to have those difficult conversations. And I'm definitely someone who doesn't shy away from a difficult conversation. I'm someone who goes in head first. I know how to relationship build and build that diplomacy and find common ground in order to be able to pass legislation that will benefit folks. So it just really requires someone who is persistent and committed to continuing to have those conversations with folks, even when you don't always agree on everything. And that is going to be extremely important, is that mindset. Having a mindset that, you know what, we may not necessarily like each other, we may not necessarily agree on all points, but we got to find a way to work together. And that's the type of mindset and leadership that we need at the state legislature right now.
And JoAnna, I'll take the next question to you first. Again, a voter question. They're a pediatrician and care for a large number of transgender youth. Over the past few years, some legislators have proposed bills that some say discriminate against transgender youth. What have you done and what will you do to not only block these bills? And what would you do, if anything, to advance the rights of transgender youth? They give the example of using the bathroom bills or the transgender athlete bills as examples of areas that need to be advanced.
Yeah, that's a great question. Even with the Supreme Court ruling this week, in Arizona, we're still seeing a lot of challenges. Bills have already been introduced by Democrats at the state legislature that are doing this work. The problem is that none of those bills are getting heard because we're not in the majority. And so first and foremost, we have to get into the majority so that we can pass some legislation that will ensure that everyone is able to live their best lives. We have the framework for these bills is already at the state legislature. The work has been done by Democrats who have been trying to push Arizona forward for a more equal Arizona for everyone. And obviously, there have been a lot of roadblocks. So I think first and foremost, we have to ensure that we are in the majority at the state capitol so that we can pass the legislation that needs to be passed to ensure that folks have the opportunity to live their best lives.
And Linda, same question. I'm happy to repeat it. They're a pediatrician who cares for a large number of transgender youth. Over the past few years, some legislators have proposed bills that some say discriminate against transgender youth. What have you done and what will you do to not only block these bills, and what would you do, if anything, to advance the rights of transgender youth?
It is my opinion that these bills are abhorrent and they have no place in a democratic society. Every child is born with dignity and should be born with fairness, lack of discrimination, and the ability to live their lives as they have determined they need to. As a high school teacher, as a high school counselor, and as a principal, I worked with these issues all the time. The first thing I found that we needed to do was there was a situation where we needed to create a culture of understanding, of compassion, and of true and genuine efforts toward trying to help transgender youth. I had kids who struggled with this and were rejected by their families. I had to make sure that I had resources within the community that I could connect those kids to when they ran away from home. It's a tragic situation that happens. A bill that was introduced last year, which was trying to take away the rights of a transgender individual to participate in athletics, is trying to send a message to those kids that they're not important and they're not accepted. So as a state legislator, I'm going to make sure that I introduce bills and take action where those kids, where those adolescents, and where those adults feel like it's a safe place to be in Arizona and be transgender. We've got to stop the hate now. And we'll do that by combined efforts where those of us who can speak up for others will do so, and we'll create a culture where this is just no longer accepted.
Thank you, Linda. I'll turn the next question to you first. The question is whether you are familiar with the process in the legislature and what experience you have with the legislative process, and how will that impact your approach as a legislator?
Well, as I served as an educator and when I was reforming high schools, one of the things we did when Stanford University accepted me into their leadership program to reform high schools is we learned about how to work with the legislature in order to get bills passed where we could let go some of the boundaries that get in the way of high school reform. And so it's not just a whim of somebody with a special interest to try to make changes in the legislature. And unfortunately, our legislature today is full of conservative-minded Republicans who are vetted in special interest money and dirty money, who are trying to forward a movement that is unfair. So I've had that experience to know what that's all about. I also understand that in Arizona, it takes both houses of the legislature to come up with a bill that goes to the governor. And a lot of times that means that we've got to go back to committees and work things out. I have spent my life working with people of diverse needs, working things out. I was highly accorded respect for the ability to work with all types of people. And I know that will launch me to the Senate where I'll be able to do the same.
Thank you. And JoAnna, same question. Are you familiar with the process in the legislature, and what experience do you have with the legislative process, and how will that impact your approach if elected?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So yes, I am familiar with the process, but I think that the process is only one aspect of the issues that we're seeing today with the inability to pass legislation that would allow folks to live their best lives. The other issue is obviously that there's so much political divide and partisanship that folks can't even come to the table to have meaningful discussion about legislation that desperately needs to be passed. Listen, you know, I worked as a congressional staffer for Congressman O'Halloran, and it was very eye-opening for me. I got to see definitely at a federal level, the limitations of our government. And it was heartbreaking to sometimes have to tell folks, listen, the system isn't working the way that it should. And you start to see how complicated the system is, how complicated our government is. And my job was to try to connect folks with resources, connect folks with organizations that could help them with their issues. And also, it's really about relationship building as well. I mean, yes, the process is there, but if you don't have a good relationship with someone at that agency to be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, listen, I've got a constituent here who has an issue and it's very important. We need to move this to the top of the list. What can you do to help them? Then, you know, having to go through the process is almost it's mind-blowing because it delays everything. There's almost this gauntlet of process that you have to go through just to get assistance in some cases. So we definitely need folks in elected office who understand not only the limitations of government, but the ability to think outside the box and how you can help your constituents by picking up the phone and maybe calling someone who you've already built a relationship with, resources in the community. And even lastly, I would say that making recommendations on how to improve that process so that folks can actually get the help that they need without having to go through a gauntlet of paperwork or this extensive process.
Thank you. And as a reminder to folks that are watching this debate live, you can submit a question at any time via email, debates@kc-a.com, by text 928-362-1062, or by phone 480-937-1297. And I'll turn the next question over to JoAnna. If elected, will you support the defunding of police? If not, do you support other reform proposals? Please be specific.
You know, I think we're in a very difficult time right now in our nation and in the state with the murder of George Floyd, the outrage over countless murders of Black men and women. And folks are tired and they're demanding change. They're outraged and they're also grieving. For some communities, seeing a police officer in their community gives them a sense of security, gives them a sense of, you know, everything's okay, there's a police officer. And for other communities, seeing a police officer is fear of the unknown of what might happen. And with good reason, because look what has happened most recently, and it's been happening for a long time. There are hundreds of deaths murders at the hands of police brutality. And so what we're seeing right now from folks is we're seeing the demand for change through the protests, through the civil unrest. We are seeing that folks no longer trust law enforcement agencies who, by the way, have taken an oath to protect and serve their communities and have clearly violated that oath time and time again. And so the protests are a cry, they're a demand for change, for police reform, to ensure that law enforcement officers who are not upholding that oath are actually held accountable, and that there's transparency in our government. Body cameras, banning of chokeholds and knees to the neck, reducing or actually having a database that would ensure that a police officer misconduct is actually recorded, and ensuring that these law enforcement officials who are violating that special trust and confidence that the public should have in them, ensuring that they are being held accountable for the crimes that they are committing. So I think right now what we're seeing is the public is saying, number one, I'm tired. We will no longer stand for this. We will no longer stand for you killing our sons, our daughters, our brothers, our sisters, our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers. Enough is enough. We need change, and we need it now.
Linda, I'll direct the question to you as well. If elected, will you support the defunding of police? And if not, do you support other reform proposals? Please be specific.
Thank you, Michelle. You know, I read a great article last week in the midst of all of this happening, and it talked about this whole issue of defunding the police. And what the point it made is that for as many, if you have 100 people in the room, 100 people would probably define that differently. The author saw this as an emotional response, and I agree it is. And it's because we have a history of not taking care of all of our people. I think we need to keep in mind that when things like this happen, and I remember the riots in the 60s, I remember times when these things have occurred. It calls for people with great minds and a big heart to come together to solve those problems. In terms of defunding the police, I don't really know what that means, but I do believe we're at a point in our society that we do need to change some things. The first thing that I think we need to take a look at is what is it that encourages a culture within the police establishment to not only have some bad actors acting out and sometimes taking people's lives, if not their rights, but also we need to look at that culture where a police officer tends to cover for that police officer. We found this in the latest shooting in Atlanta. It was really surprising when the fellow officer of the officer that shot this individual has come forward and said, I'll testify against him. We need more of that. In addition, we need to ban chokeholds and neck restraints. We need to require de-escalation training. We need to require officers to exhaust all other alternatives before they resort to deadly force. We need to require a verbal warning before deadly force is ever happening. We need to ban shooting in moving vehicles and ban shooting in populated areas where innocent bystanders can become victims. We need to require bad actors to be entered into a database so that we can make sure that officers that are misbehaving are provided an opportunity to make sure that we take care of the very small minority of officers that are being bad actors. We've got an issue right now, and we need to have the best hearts and the best minds coming together to try to solve this issue. I have hope we can do that. And I look forward to initiating some of those in the state legislature.
Right.
Thank you, Linda. I will go ahead and turn the next question over to you now. It appears that there was what the commenter is saying is a racially inappropriate cartoon posted by Senator Vince Leach on Facebook recently. What is your opinion regarding that matter?
When I looked at his Facebook and saw that, it was a picture that was very stereotypical and very discriminatory. And I was outraged. I have to think in 2020 that someone who's a sitting state senator would typify a minority person and a minority family as trying to feed off of welfare as something that you didn't see that you saw in the 60s and 70s. The fact that this sitting senator would post such a racist cartoon, in my mind, was abhorrent. It's something that never should have happened. The very fact that this state senator is behaving in that kind of a way, in that kind of a manner, is absolutely abhorrent, and he should not be in the legislature. Some people have talked about censuring that legislature. Some people have talked about removing him from office. I don't know what the answer is, but I know what he did is wrong, is hateful, and has no place in our society.
JoAnna, I'll turn the question over to you regarding the post from Senator Vince Leach. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, you know what the answer is? The answer is we need to vote him out, and we need to elect leadership who is going to act the way that they should be. We expect our elected leadership to be modeling behavior that is appropriate and not racist in nature. You know, I think that it is easy to point the finger and call out racism or microaggressions or dog whistle politics when it's across the aisle from a member of the opposing political party. But it takes a lot more courage to do that within your own circles, within your own friends, within your own groups. Now, as a person of color, as a woman of color, I have experienced those microaggressions and dog whistle politics within this race. And I'll tell you that the conversation, nobody wants to be the person to have to call it out. That sucks. It really does. No one wants to be that person to have to say, look, what you said was inappropriate. But what I would really like to see is that when it is called out within our own circles, that the folks who are being called out don't double down on their language. Instead, they say, I wasn't aware. I'll do better next time. Can you talk to me about how I can do that? How can I do better next time? Instead of doubling down on the language, that is usually what ends up happening. So, you know, the post, yes, inappropriate, racist, not only to communities of color, but to women, and it needs to stop. So the answer is that we need to elect him. We need to elect him out. We need to vote him out. He needs to go. And we need to elect leadership who will actually model the behavior that we want to see, someone that we can be proud of and someone that we definitely know will lead us in the right direction instead of posting these inappropriate posts.
Thank you, JoAnna. The next question that came in is, how will you make minority voices heard in the state Senate?
Am I starting?
Yes, sorry, JoAnna. Yes, please.
Yes. Okay. So, well, I think one thing that is extremely important is representation matters. You know, I am a person of color. I am a woman of color. And I can tell you that growing up, kids like me who grew up in poverty, we didn't see anyone who looked like us, who came from where we came from poverty, running for office or in elected office. So I think that representation does matter. We need to ensure that we're giving folks the opportunity of all backgrounds, a diverse group of folks. It's time. It's time we had elected leaders who are from diverse backgrounds, who are from the communities in which we grew up in, representing us in elected office. I think it really does start there. But the other thing is that we have to give folks an opportunity to share what their needs are with us as elected officials. I mean, the current sitting state senator refuses to meet with certain groups if they don't align with his special interests. He refuses to meet with women alone if they don't have a male escort. So that tells me that the needs of the people, to include our marginalized communities and communities of color, are not being heard. We need elected leadership who is going to be willing to sit down with folks, have town halls, who's going to be willing to listen to the needs of folks from everywhere throughout the district, and who will say, okay, I heard you, I see what you're saying, I understand the need, and most importantly, take action with that information.
And Linda, I'll ask you the same question. How will you make minority voices heard in the state Senate?
Well, you know, it's really interesting because my Black and brown friends have been very clear to me, even when they lived in my house, that there's just something that is going to be between the two of us. They said, Linda, you're compassionate, you're open, you're willing to, you know, interact with us, but there's just something that will always be between us. When I first heard that, I was shocked. But you know, the more I grew and the older I got, I saw that there's a lot of truth to that. So what that means is I have to be more compassionate. I have to work harder. I have to read books. I have to read research. I have to continue to interact with people so I can still learn. Now, as a teacher and as a high school counselor and as a principal, I always worked in communities of color, in communities of low socioeconomics, because I felt that's where I could make the biggest difference. I was highly regarded for being able to do that. My students of all colors and of all economic means really appreciated me and saw me as a source of inspiration. As a counselor, the same thing happened. I dealt with kids who had to deal with racism. As a principal, I had to make sure that the entire school culture was accepting, that there weren't hate crimes, that there wasn't bullying. And I will carry those same attitudes into the state Senate. I think it's really important that we don't allow bills to even be forwarded in the legislature that are hateful, that lack regard for other people. And so I'm open to having conversations with legislators who are thinking about bringing those to committee. I think I can be honest and forthright. I've done it all my life. Hey, I'm not perfect. Everybody has room to grow. But I think I'm very, very aware of the need for us to be inclusive, for us to bring everybody into the tent, and for us to live as our Constitution demands. Justice, fairness, and equality for all.
Thank you. And Linda, I'll turn this question over to you. How will you support the protection and expansion of public lands?
You know, public lands are very dear to me. I've spent my life in the environment. When I lived in coastal communities, I was a scuba diver and I studied reefs to try to contribute to that. When I lived in the agricultural community, I worked with scientists during my college years to talk about what pesticides and herbicides do to our food sources. When I moved to Arizona, I saw it as a land that was so diverse and so precious that we need to make sure that we take care of our public lands. Now, there's a legislator, a House representative in District 11 who wants to open up mining, state senator that wants to do the same, who wants to allow public roads to go into public lands. And to me, they no longer are precious if we've got them open to all sorts of if we let them degenerate by people using them. So I have always worked with environmental groups. In fact, I'm an environmental activist and have been all of my life. And I will continue that type of stewardship to make sure that we take care of our public lands. The very fact that Governor Ducey has taken public lands out of the land trust is abhorrent in my mind. A lot of people, a lot of corporations are seeing that, hey, things are opening for mining in the Grand Canyon. That can't happen. We need sensible approaches to make sure that our public lands remain precious.
Thank you. JoAnna, I'll ask you the same question. How will you support the protection and expansion of public lands?
Well, I think that really does have to begin with conversations with groups and the local communities about how these lands are being used, how we can best use them. You know, as a veteran who has been forward deployed to Iraq twice and once to Afghanistan, and have friends that were actually patrolling down the streets of Baghdad and have some serious mental health issues, PTSD, returning from combat. You know, a lot of them would use our state parks to hike and to reconnect with nature, to be one with nature, to declutter their mind. And we've seen a big push for that. Most recently here in Southern Arizona, you have groups like My Veterans Passion, who every week go out and conduct hikes. You know, veterans and their families are welcome to do so. Of course, they've been minimized now that we've, you know, with the pandemic, but it is about reconnecting with the environment and with nature. I would like to see more of that happening, and how our lands can be used to help folks with trauma heal. But those have to begin with conversations, and we have to be willing to have conversations, even the tough conversations about the misuse of our lands. They need to be available for our children for the future. You know, I'm very concerned about the amount of funding that is also not going to ensure that our state parks are being maintained the way that they should be. These are valuable resources that we should be protecting so that future generations can benefit for them. And they can be very useful and beneficial when it comes to trauma.
Thank you, JoAnna. As a reminder to everyone watching at home, we have a lot of questions coming in, so we'll do our best to get to each and every one of them if the time allows for it. If you do want to submit a question still, you can do so via email, debates@kc-a.com, by text 928-362-1062, or by phone 480-937-1297. And I will go ahead, JoAnna, and turn this question over to you now. What new legislation will you sponsor in the Arizona Senate if elected?
That's a great question. You know, I always start with saying that education is absolutely a priority and important. And we need to focus on ensuring that we are actually funding education. But early childhood education is the foundation for those building blocks and how students will learn, how our children will learn for the rest of their lives. And it is extremely important. And with the already lack of funding to public education, we certainly don't have room for early childhood education programs. You know, there was a bill that was introduced this last legislative session that would provide or allocate some funding for early childhood programs, preschool programs, especially in areas like LD11, where we have, you know, preschool and childcare deserts. I mean, the accessibility to programs who will ensure that our children can develop the skills, the social skills, and even skills for how they'll learn in the future is extremely important to making sure that we invest in our future. And those programs are tied to the economy as well. I mean, organizations, corporations don't want to come to Arizona because we don't have the educated workforce, but yet we refuse to invest in our public education system to ensure that we do have those educated workforce to be able to fill some of these positions that will be brought here by corporations. And then we go back and we say, well, we need to improve the economy. So we're going to give millions and millions of dollars in tax breaks and tax credits to corporations because we need to grow the economy and put them here. What we really need to do is we need to invest in our education, and we need to invest in our children.
Thank you. Linda, same question. If elected, what new legislation will you sponsor in the Arizona Senate?
Thank you, Michelle. This gets back to my opening statement. You know, we have LD11 is very, very diverse. So as I've gone through the district and listened to people, I have heard diverse needs. And so when I'm the next senator, my plate's going to be full. You know, there are a lot of people say that you should only focus on one or two or three things, and that wouldn't be representing the people of our district. And so on my list is we need strong schools and we need job training. We need affordable and accessible healthcare. We need to rebuild our schools, both structurally, infrastructure-wise, but also we need to fully fund schools. We need to create a strong economy that rebuilds the middle class and that provides jobs. In our district, pre-COVID, our unemployment rate was 6% to 11.5%, one of the largest in the state. We can't have that anymore. We need to eliminate special interests and dirty money. People I've talked to really commend me for running clean elections. I won't accept 1 cent of special interest, PAC, or dirty money. I pledge that to you. I don't want to be beholden to anybody but the people in our district. And finally, for our veterans, we need to support our veterans. Mental health counseling is one of the things. PTSD is very real in their lives. We need to make sure we support veterans. So the list is long. It's an incomplete list, I know, but those are the ones that come to mind to me of what I've heard from the people of LD11.
Thank you. Linda, I'll start this question with you. Why should you be selected in the primary over your opponent?
Well, you know, I think that if I look at experience, I have had the experience of working with diverse groups of people all of my life. I have worked hand in hand with people to create solutions to make life better for them. I understand what it takes. For over 35 years, I built strong, supportive reforms for people. And that's what we need in Arizona right now. We have been under Republican rule for over 40 years. That's just not right. We need to invest in our people. And I know how to do that. Again, I want to stress that you've got to get your data together, you've got to get your research together, and you have to get your best practices together. I have done that. I listen and I hear what people want. That's unique. People have told me as I've campaigned through our district that they really do support me and they want to see me in the Senate because they think I'm the best candidate with the experience and character that matters.
JoAnna, I'll ask you the same question. Why should voters choose you in the primary over your opponent?
And that's a great question. And, you know, I always start with saying that I hate this question because I feel like it pits two Democratic women who are running to unseat a very toxic conservative Republican incumbent, right? But the truth is that, you know, if we're talking about experience and we're talking about action and leadership, I have a little over 20 years of military leadership experience, and I've led men and women forward deployed to combat environments, to Iraq twice and once to Afghanistan. The type of leadership that we need in our district right now has to be leadership that understands and has experience in balancing a mission for success while ensuring the well-being and safety of the folks that you are entrusted to lead. And I have that experience. I also have experience as a congressional staffer already serving the people in our communities in this legislative district. I have already done that work. I understand the issues that are impacting not just our district, but Arizona as a whole. So if we're really talking about who has demonstrated the ability to lead, who has the experience, I mean, I think the proof is in the pudding. We have built a campaign that is inclusive, that is diverse, that has brought folks who would never otherwise, who have apathy towards the government and the political system, who are now coming to us and saying, you know what, I've never been motivated more than when I saw you run in your campaign. You understand what we're going through. I'm a local I was born and raised in our communities right here in Pinal County, and I understand the struggle because I'm a working mom myself. And who better to fight for the people in this district than someone who understands the struggle that working families face each and every day?
The next question from a voter indicates Republican voters outnumber Democrat voters nearly 2-1 in Legislative District 11. How will you overcome this advantage and earn enough votes to win in November and defeat Senator Leach? JoAnna, I'll turn that question to you first.
Yes, this is a great question. So yes, we know that traditionally or historically that LD11 is a red district. Now, over the last couple of years, the last couple of elections, we have folks like Ralph Atchu and Holly Lyon who have really done the work to get out the vote, to increase the Democratic Performance Index in this district. And guess what? We're now pink. We're trending blue. We're going to get there. Since when I started this campaign in August, we had a little over 142,000 registered voters in this district. And in April, May, the Secretary of State's website reported that we were over 152,000 registered voters. Now, what does that tell you? That tells us that folks are getting energized. They're getting activated. They not only understand that we're in the fight for the soul of our democracy, but we're in the fight for our lives right now. And they want change. They are demanding change. So to answer the question is, I am extremely proud of what we've built in the last couple of months. We've energized folks. I am a different type of candidate. I'm not independently wealthy. I'm not rich. I'm a local from these communities, which you don't see folks like me running for office. Kids like me just don't make it out of poverty. And so I believe that with my diverse background, serving in the military, serving as a congressional staffer and already serving folks in this legislative district, and the work that we've done in our campaign, I think we have a really good shot at flipping this district as long as I can take that fight to the incumbent in November.
And Linda, same question. With the district being a 2-1 Republican Democrat, how will you overcome this advantage and earn enough votes in November to defeat Senator Leach?
Thank you, Michelle. You know, that's something that is really on the minds of LD11 voters. And I have to compliment Field Team 6 and the Democratic clubs for really sponsoring a concentrated effort to get more Democrats registered to vote. And it's been highly successful. We have grown the Democratic Party in LD11 significantly. Now, the demographics of the district are that you've got a little bit over a third independent voters. You've got the next in line, which are Republicans, and the next group that are Democrats. So we can't win it alone. So you have to have someone who can bring other people into the fold. I don't take one Democratic voter for granted. And that's why I'm working so hard to really hear what people want. The independents need to know they have a voice. There are a lot of left-leaning independent voters that I think my message will resonate with. And then my experience in public education will help bring a lot of Republicans into my fold. There are a lot of people that are fed up with things. I stand on Holly Lyon's and Ralph Atchu's shoulders, but I also stand on the shoulders of those people who are rebuilding and registering voters. And you know, it is mathematically possible. And in fact, I think the fact that we have had really good candidates running in the past has only paved the path for someone like me. I look forward to continuing to engage voters beyond the primary, and I think we can come up with, well, I know we can come up with a winning number.
Linda, I'll start this next question with you. Do you consider the position of Arizona State Senator from Legislative District 11 as a springboard to other political purposes?
That's a wonderful question. And I want to be very clear, very transparent, and you can hold me accountable on this. My only desire is to serve in the state Senate. I don't have eyes on any other office because I know that the best efforts I can make are in the state Senate. When I taught government, I talked to my students about politics is local. It's local and state races that really affect you. So I don't have eyes on Congress like I know some do. I don't have eyes on anything more than representing the people of District 11 and making sure we come up with solutions that are going to serve them. I'm passionate about that. I'm dedicated to do it, and I won't leave anybody behind in that effort.
JoAnna, same question. Do you consider the position of Arizona State Senator from LD11 as a springboard for other political purposes?
You know, I think that in the past, what we've seen is that a lot of folks in the state legislature have gone on to go and serve in Congress. And if they're doing the work of the people, then why not? Why not want to serve in an office, in a federal office, so that you can have a greater impact and improve people's lives on a greater scale? So, I mean, you know, like I mentioned before, you have state legislators who have served in the state legislature. Congressman O'Halloran was one of them. Our beloved Gabby Giffords was another. And I think that if folks really want to continue a life of service and they want to try to do the best good that they possibly can for the greatest amount of people, then by all means, go for it. Do what you need to do. I think that it is okay to have dreams and goals and aspirations. I think to sit there and say that we shouldn't aspire to be more or do more is wrong. We should encourage all folks to want to run for office. If you have it in you, if you believe that you can bring positive change to our district, to Arizona, by all means, go for it. Join us in this fight. Do it. We need to ensure that we have a more diverse group, a more diverse pool of candidates. We need more people of color, more people from our local communities, more folks who understand what it's like to struggle every day in Arizona, because those are the folks that are really going to fight hard for you.
Thank you. And we keep getting questions that are coming in, so I'll repeat the information again in the event that we can get to your question. And you can send questions in via email, debates@kc-a.com, by text 928-362-1062, or by phone at 480-937-1297. Another question that came in, and I'll turn this to JoAnna, do you support state legislators being able to force the Attorney General to take action against cities outside of their district? And how would you change this?
So, you know, I think that what we see happening is that we have a government here in Arizona who does not want to allow local leaders to lead. We've seen that with the slow response from the governor to the pandemic originally in May, where he wasn't making a decision. And then you had several leaders step up, local leaders in Tucson and Phoenix and Flagstaff step up, and these mayors stepped up and they made a decision to ensure that they were keeping people safe. And so I think that we need to work we need to find a work together in unity with our local leaders. And instead of this back and forth of you can do this and you can't do that, and I give you permission to do this, but you can't do that, to me, that is just ridiculous. We need to have conversations about how we can keep people safe during this crisis, during these difficult times in our nation. And I'm sorry, but leadership by tweet is not it. The governor should not be pushing out information that should be handed off or passed off or explained to our local leadership about what's going to happen in our state. I mean, I think Mayor Regina Romero and Mayor Gallego, they heard over tweet that we were that they were going to implement that the government was going to implement a curfew during the protests. And so leadership by tweet needs to stop. Let's pick up the phone. Let's talk to each other. Let's let local elected leaders do what they need to do. And let's find a way how we can support them.
And Linda, same question. Do you support legislators being able to force the Attorney General to take action against cities outside of their district? And how would you change this?
Absolutely not. You know, the incumbent senator, Mr. Leach, has done this time and time again. Most recently, He took on the mayors in Flagstaff, in Phoenix, and in Tucson regarding the COVID response. He wanted to make sure that they didn't have the local control that Arizonans have always held dear. You know, we're an independent-minded group. And so we make sure that we've got clear boundaries. And for a sitting senator to think that he could go into a different district and try to establish rules goes against everything we believe in. And it's not the first time Vince Leach has done that. He does that. He's done it twice in the past year. You know, I think there's a certain code and a sense of ethics that comes with being a state senator. And one of those codes and ethics is to be responsible and to respect boundaries. Vince Leach doesn't do that. I will. I know how important it is to stay in your lane. Hey, that doesn't mean that I won't reach out and try to reform things. But the last thing I would do would try to bring the Attorney General in to sue a local government about getting things my way.
Linda, the next question for you from a voter: how do you recommend bringing and engaging younger voters into the local elections that are normally left out of elections such as this one?
You know, I was one of those young voters. We got the right to vote when I was 18. What engaged me was knowing that people cared about our voice. You know, I've worked with young people in high schools. I know how to engage them. You listen to them. You take in what they're saying and you act on their behalf. I have been a younger voter in my 20s and 30s. And the concerns I had at that time was, could I put food on the table? Could I raise my son that I was raising by myself? I was a single parent. Is there something that's resonating about what one candidate is saying over the other? That's where I became committed to the Democratic parties, because I felt they heard my voice. As a state senator, I have to make sure that I am in tune with what is happening with younger voters. I don't have to be that age in order to be in tune. It's about being able to work with people. It's about being able to not only listen, but to hear people. I know what the struggles are for younger families right now. I know what the struggles are for people graduating out of high school. I've listened, I'm aware, I read the research, I look at the data, and I look at best practices. And I know that's a winning solution for the people that I need to represent. You're 18 through 110.
And JoAnna, same question. How do you recommend bringing and engaging young people into the local elections who are normally left out of elections such as this one?
You know, I think this problem stems deeper to just connecting with young voters at the age of 18. I think that we need to start to normalize seeing children at Democratic club meetings, having our children at campaign events. You know, I'm a single mom myself. And when I first stepped into this race, I was told by many folks, well, you can't run for office. You're a mom. You have a little one. What are you going to do with your kid? Or, you know, women with little kids, they just don't run for office. And I made it a point to bring my son to campaign events and have him at Democratic club meetings, because it was so important for me, for him to see me doing the work that I'm doing, because someday he will have his own fight. And I think that that's how we start engaging our young folks, is that we have to involve them in the process early. We need to get more parents out there with their kids at these Democratic club meetings, talking about voter registration and the Pebble, and really giving them an understanding and an example of what it looks like to fight for what you believe in. And that is what I am doing right now. But the two things that I would really like to do to engage our youth is, number one, I would like to have a youth advisory committee as state senator and bring young folks into the fold to talk about things that are affecting them, how they want to see the district move forward. I really want to hear what ideas they have. So I think that's number one. Number two, let's pass some legislation that would allow us to pre-register young folks. So when you're 16 and 17 years old, you can go and you can fill out this form and you turn 18, guess what? You're already a registered voter. So I think those two things would really help engage folks in our process and bring them into the fold with us.
Thank you, JoAnna. I'll turn the next question over to you. In regards to right to work laws, would you support legislation to remove right to work laws?
Yes, I mean, I firmly believe that we need to do more for working families in this district. Right to work laws are just, they're no good. They don't help the worker, the employee. We need to have legislation. We need to put things in place that will ensure that workers can provide for their families, that they're getting a livable wage. That we remove discriminations and laws that would leave them potentially out of business or fired for no apparent reason. We need to ensure, especially now during the pandemic, that folks who are putting themselves in the front line and putting themselves at risk every single day to ensure that we've got food on the table, to ensure that services are provided, are also being protected during these times. And let me tell you, this is an issue that's very near and dear to my heart. My mom, who was an essential worker for the Arizona Department of Corrections, she's a contractor through an organization that specializes in food service. She was working in the kitchen with inmates, contracted COVID in May, and there was no worker protections for her. And she even told me at one point, "JoAnna, mija, it's only a matter of time before I get it." And when she finally did get it, it was devastating. We were so scared. Had things been put in place to protect our workers, maybe we wouldn't be in that situation. Maybe folks across the district who can't fully retire, seniors like my mom who have to work to pay bills, would have better protections and wouldn't be unnecessarily exposed to COVID. So we definitely need to protect workers, working families in Arizona.
Linda, same question. Will you support legislation to remove right to work laws?
Right to work laws are an effort of unions, like I've been a Teamster and I've been a union member as a teacher and a counselor. And basically they're to protect workers from companies not being allowed to bring in other workers over them. So I don't support right to work laws. I think it's union busting. I think it doesn't protect workers in terms of allowing them to earn living wages. You know, the union presence in our state, I know people are working hard to bring that in. I believe that working jobs build the middle class. And so I'll do everything I can to support rebuilding the middle class.
Thank you. And the next question, we just have a few more left before we close for the night. But the next question is, what are your recommendations for dealing with COVID-19? Linda, I'll turn it to you first.
Okay. Well, for those of you that don't know, I'm a COVID survivor. And I think when you have personal experience with a pandemic disease or any experience you have, it only makes you more heartfelt in looking at ways that maybe you were shortchanged and how to make things better. I'm really concerned right now that the state of Oregon is one of the leading states per capita with COVID every day. We're growing. I listened to Governor Ducey prior to coming to the debate tonight, and he doesn't seem concerned. That's not right. I caught it when it was just coming into Arizona. The day I caught it, they were just talking about hand sanitizer. Well, so I showed up at this campaign event I was at with hand sanitizer, but nobody was talking about masks at that point. I know that my closeness to other people at those events exposed me to COVID. So we're falling short in our state. And so we've got to do better. We've got to learn the lessons that other states have learned. You know, one thing that really concerns me is, Governor Ducey started out with a sound program. He closed the state down. And then I find it interesting that Trump came to visit, and a day later, Ducey announced that he was going to open the state back up. You can't have that kind of stuff happen. We've got to make sure that we put the public health of people first. That's the job of government. And I'm sorely disappointed that that's not going on right now. Oh yeah, I can make all sorts of recommendations. But the best thing is that we've got to make sure that we have a government that is looking out for people and their public health. This has gone on too long in our state. And the fact that we're not taking direct action is a sore point for me. We have people suffering. COVID doesn't go away just when you get out of the hospital. There's things that stay in your organs for they don't know how long. We need to do better. We need to demand more of our government, and we need to get active as people to advocate for ourselves, because the governor is not.
JoAnna, I'll ask the same question. What are your recommendations for dealing with COVID-19?
So I think first and foremost, the governor needs to call a special session. We have funding that needs to be allocated to social service programs that folks are in desperate need of right now. And there's a refusal to do that for several reasons, because there's a lot of issues right now. There's a lot of civil unrest with the murder of George Floyd and several other Black Americans. And the governor doesn't want to have to address police reform, doesn't want to have to address the other issues that are on the table. And the longer that we go without addressing these issues, without a special session, the longer that people are going to go suffering. We need to ensure that folks have access to affordable healthcare, that folks don't have to pay for testing. So we need to continue the testing effort so that everyone has the ability to get tested. And then we also need to ensure that folks who do test positive have protections put in place for employment. I shared with you before that my mother had COVID, was diagnosed officially with COVID over a month ago. She still has not been able to go back to work. She's on the verge of losing her job because she only got 2 weeks off from her job, and her job is constantly asking her every single day, when are you going to come back to work? So folks who are being impacted by COVID, who test positive for COVID, who still have a requirement to put food on the table for their kids, for their families, a roof over their family's head, they need protections. They need to be protected. We need to ensure that we're doing more to protect our families in Arizona. Lastly, we need to ensure that we start exploring ways on how to continue to keep people safe while at the same time trying to get back to a little bit of normalcy. With reopening our schools, folks are concerned with even now with the shortfalls in our budget. We need to start exploring alternative resources for state revenue. These are things that can't wait. We as legislators, our state legislators should be thinking about this, and they should be pushing our governor to do more. So I say we call a special session. We address these issues that are on the table so that Arizonans feel that we are doing what is absolutely necessary to put them first.
Thank you, JoAnna. I will ask the next question to you. Are you for or against the Invest in Education Citizens Initiative?
Well, I'm for investing in education. I think I've said it several times throughout this entire debate, is that we need to ensure that funding for our education is protected. You know, our schools, I serve as a school board member in my small rural school district as well. And serving as a school board member really opened my eyes to how the lack of funding has negatively impacted our schools, from teacher salary to ensuring that the school infrastructure is safe, to even a special education funding. There are shortfalls everywhere. We need to ensure that we are investing in our children, that we're doing everything that we can so that everyone can have access to a quality education regardless of zip code. So do I support investing in our children? Absolutely.
Thank you. And I'll go ahead, Linda, and ask you the same question. What is your position on the, what is your position on the Invest in Education Citizens Initiative?
Thank you, Michelle. You know, I'm a product of public schools. I worked in public schools for 36 years. To say that I support Invest in Ed, it hits the mark. Yes, I support it. We have to invest in our kids because they're the future of our state and our nation. You know what is sad is that it has to be the teachers that are putting this forward. You know, the Red for Ed movement and the Invest in Ed movement is absolutely wonderful, but it's too bad that teachers are the ones that have to fight to invest in ed. I am very, very concerned about full funding education. We've got to make sure that kids from pre-kindergarten through college have access to great education. I'm a proponent of that. I always have been. I will continue to work for that. I'm a senator that wants to be known as the education senator. I'll do all I can to make sure teachers get the wages they deserve, that kids get exposed to the curriculum and the events that they need to have in order to learn and grow. Education is huge. Our future is in school today. Yes, I'll invest in that for the entire time I'm a state senator and beyond.
Thank you, Linda. What is your position on qualified immunity for law enforcement?
Qualified immunity?
Yes. For offering immunity to officers for doing their job, essentially.
Well, you know, that isn't something I'd support just because qualified immunity, you know, I'm not familiar with that term, but I can only make sense of it. And that is that a police maybe would have immunity from being held accountable.
If their actions don't violate any statutory or legal authority or constitutional right.
You know, we can't violate people's constitutional rights. We've got to make sure that we're transparent and accountable to people. Whatever the term is for that, I support very much that we've got to make sure that we're transparent, that we don't have immunity for police if they're a part of wrongdoing. We need to make sure that the police are held accountable to the people and for their actions.
Thank you. JoAnna, same question. Yeah, you know, I think something was mentioned earlier about, you know, well, actually, there's always the argument that you hear about, well, there's a few bad apples, there's a few bad actors in law enforcement agencies, and we shouldn't penalize the rest of our law enforcement agencies because we had a few bad apples and a few bad actors. Well, let me tell you, I have worn a military uniform, and I have taken an oath many times to protect and defend our Constitution of the United States of America. Police officers take an oath to protect and serve their communities. And when one officer violates that, they need to be held accountable. They need to be held accountable just like everyone else. And I think what I am very concerned about right now is why we don't see more law enforcement officials who have done the hard work, who are upholding their oath to protect and serve our communities, who have done everything right, who have been just and fair. Why are we not seeing them outraged by these few bad actors and few bad apples? So to answer your question, you know, we need to hold officers accountable. If they commit a crime, if they commit a murder, they need to be held accountable just like everyone else.
Thank you, JoAnna. We're still getting a few questions coming in, so we'll try to get these answered in brevity here. So JoAnna, we'll start with you. What is your plan to get a living wage to working people in Legislative District 11?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, we're actually endorsed by the Teamsters and CWA prominent union labor organizations here in Arizona. And you know, we've had these conversations about a livable wage and how folks should be able to, you know, have one job, and that job should be enough to ensure that they are providing for their families. And the problem is that right now we have legislators who are about protecting their corporate special interests and not really investing or taking care of people. And so I think first and foremost, we need to get elected so that we can continue to push for legislation that would allow folks to live their best lives, that would allow folks to be able to provide for their families. And we need to continue the conversations with our labor brothers and sisters about what that looks like. You know, we have a very limited union presence in District 11. And as state senator, I will definitely fight to ensure that we're having conversations with labor leaders, with union leaders about how we can better serve folks in our community so that they can, so that we can push to get a livable wage.
Linda, same question. What is your plan to get a living wage to workers in Legislative District 11?
I've looked at the Arizona economy from a lot of different angles. And what I've come to realize is that in order for us to be able to fund living wages for our workers, we need to make sure, one, that we fully fund education so we can fund it to the level to where if a person is 18 years old and wants to go to college, they can live their dream out that way. If they're 18 years old, and I'm talking about right after out of high school, if they want to go into the world of work, we need to make sure that we've got workplace training for those people. You know, I lived in a state that attracted businesses who paid working wages by building a great educational system. Companies that pay working wages and living wages want to be able to bring their people into the fold to where you can realize that a strong economy builds living wage jobs. I believe very strongly that we need to recreate our economic system. We're in the technological age right now, but I don't see a lot of state effort to build toward building those jobs. We need to recreate what we're used to doing. We need to move beyond and look at growing things. In some ways, I think we're stuck in neutral. We need to look at what is happening in other states to where they can attract living wage jobs. We don't do that in Arizona. I look forward to being a leader in establishing that effort.
Thank you, Linda. We have not received any more voter questions from those tuning in, so I think we will go ahead and proceed with the closing remarks. So for closing statements, Linda, you may begin with yours.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Michelle, and thank the Clean Elections Commission for providing this venue for JoAnna and I to express our thoughts and our hopes and our dreams for the state. My goal in coming here tonight was that I wanted to inform you about who I am and what I want to do as your next state senator. As I said before, it will be my highest honor to represent you in the state Senate. I don't take that lightly. I think it's really important that a senator represents you and represents your needs. I will do that. I'm really concerned about what special interest money and dirty money and PAC money has done to our democracy. That's why I decided to be a clean elections candidate. I'm not going to be beholden to anybody but to you. My opponents can't say that. I won't make a decision based on who contributed to my campaign. That's wrong. And I won't be a part of that. Oh, there were people who told me before I ran, hey, you got to be a part of this. It's just a game that you play. No, I don't play games. I'm principled, I'm deliberate, and I make sure that I am taking care of your concerns. My heart is filled with hope for our future. I think we can rebuild our democracy. I believe in our democracy, but you know, we've gotten off course. And I think big money and special interests have done that. I look forward to being honest, transparent, and accountable to you. I will represent you to the best of my abilities when with my heart fully into it. Please consider my candidacy. You can check my website. You can check the mailings that are going to be coming out. There are a myriad of ways which you can learn more about me. In fact, you can contact me by my personal email, which is on my website. I want to hear from you because it's important to have leaders who care about the people they represent, and I will.
Thank you, Linda. JoAnna, for your closing remarks.
Yes, again, thank you so much to the Clean Elections Commission and you, Michelle, for moderating this awesome Clean Elections debate. Listen, you know, I'm a small town kid born and raised in our communities right here in Pinal County. You know, I am the daughter of farm workers and worked alongside my parents in the cotton fields every summer in the hot Arizona sun for many years. And despite how hard they worked, they still had a difficult time making ends meet. And we often found ourselves on government assistance programs like food stamps, public housing. I was the kid on free lunch at school and Access, Arizona's Medicaid program. And had it not been for those programs, I don't know if we would have made it through. And after military service and coming back to the district, I realized that folks were still having a very difficult time. I mean, families were struggling, just like I had struggled. I always make it a point to talk about the struggle and growing up in poverty because kids like me, we're not supposed to make it out of poverty. Kids like me are not supposed to go to college. We're not supposed to get a good paying job. We're not supposed to aspire to be more and do more. And we're definitely not supposed to aspire to run for office. And kids like me rarely do. But here I am. The work that I've done in military uniform, the service to our country, the continued service outside of military uniform, volunteering for several boards, volunteering in the community, serving as a school board member in my small rural school district, serving as a congressional staffer for Congressman O'Halloran, and really doing the work of the people already in this district is valuable experience and leadership that I'll bring to the table. I think it's time that we had representation who really understands the struggle that working families are facing every day. I'm not independently wealthy, I'm not retired, and I'm a working mom. And so who's going to fight harder for folks in this district than someone who understands those struggles firsthand? You know, I fought my way out of poverty. I fought to protect our constitutional rights as a United States Marine, and I will fight for folks in this district. So I'm asking you humbly, please, we need your support. I'm asking you for your vote. Join us in this fight so that we can then take the fight to the incumbent in November to flip District 11 so that we can have a brighter future for you, for our children, and for everyone across Arizona. You can find more information on my website and how to get involved at www.mendoza4arizona.com. And again, thank you so much, and I hope we can count on your support.
Thank you both. This concludes our debate. To the candidates, we thank you both so much for participating. To the voters, we thank all of you who took the time to watch the debate and inform yourselves before the August 4th primary election. The Citizens Clean Election Commission is your source for nonpartisan voter information. We encourage you to visit azcleanelections.gov for all of your voting needs. Thank you again so much for joining us. Good night.